In Lineup Logic to the Week 8 NFL DFS live stream. I am your host, Mike Alexander. Joining me this week, take no days off, my man Jeremy. What's going on?
What's going on, Mike?
How you doing?
I'm all right. Last week was pretty solid for me. Got a bounce back week with the Thielen and Gurley stack. There was no way I was fading those two. So, yeah, finally got a good bounce back week.
Yeah,
How about you? What's up?
I got crushed by Zeke. I thought he was my co-captain on
Yeah.
Team Jam him in, but he left me high and dry. So I was all around it with some plays like carry on. Had a lot of Nick Chubb stuff like that, but uh, didn't quite have the right recipe to have a great week. So, but we're moving on. Got this week. And that's where we're kind of kicking most of these live streams off, is whether to use Todd Gurley or not. So, I said it plenty. I'm definitely team cram him in. You got to really use Gurley. On FanDuel, it's tougher this week. They've really spiked his price to up to 11K.
Absolutely.
So it's not quite as easy on DraftKings. You can pull it off without too much maneuvering. But even on FanDuel, like I just think there's always receiver options that are values. This week, not quite the same spread, with bye weeks and things like that, but you can definitely make it happen. Are you using the Gurley this week, Jeremy?
In my first build, I did not have Gurley on FanDuel, because I played him at 10,000 and at 10,200, but at 11,000, you're taking up so much of the salary now. Now it's actually getting hard to actually build lineups with that.
Yep.
Put that into account with the fact that James Conner and Kareem Hunt are in absolute smash spots, and I feel like saving that 3,000 from Todd Gurley and going with Connor or going with Hunt, and you can make, like, that's the difference between I don't know, like a 7K wide receiver, or I'm sorry, a 7.5K wide receiver and a minimum salary wide receiver. So
Right.
it's a huge difference right there. So I love Gurley ceiling, but more for DraftKings than for FanDuel.
Yeah, I felt like last week there weren't options outside of Gurley. There were like Chubb late in the week popped for us, and there were guys like Drake and on Johnson that they had a shot at having a good game, and they did end up having good games. But anybody that told you those guys were a lock going into that game is lying to you. So this week's a little different. You brought up two guys there, Connor and Hunt. They're in really good spots. You got Saquon Barkley right there. Even Joe Mixon. I don't love this matchup for Joe Mixon, but people certainly like him this week. So you can still cram him in with two of the top 5 guys. And like you said, are you better off with Hunt and Connor, or Gurley and Raheem Mostert, something like that? So I like the Connor Hunt line of thinking right now. And it's not that Gurley's gonna have a bad game. Like, I don't think he's gonna have a bad game all year unless he literally doesn't score a touchdown because they're winning so much in the first half. He's gonna have an average game, and if he has an average game at 11K and there's other values to be had at running back, you've tied up too much salary. So that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, and the thing about, Gurley, the only way he fails is if the only way he fails in terms of his salary is not scoring 2 touchdowns.
Right.
Because that's what he has to do in order to fulfill. Right? Like, he needs multi-touchdown plus 100 yards. So
right. Like, if he gets 1 touchdown and 85 rushing yards and 15 passing receiving yards, like, you wouldn't call that a failure for a running back. But if a guy's 11K on FanDuel, that doesn't quite get it done.
yeah, it's like remember when we were always doing the same thing with Antonio Brown.
Right.
And if Antonio Brown didn't get 100 yards and a touchdown, then it was a failure play.
Right. So, the only thing is I'm not sure this is the week that doesn't happen, because I think Green Bay definitely has the offense to push them back. The defense, Green Bay's defense, I think is kind of garbage. We'll jump into that game. Let's go right to it. We're ready for the game previews, I think. So we'll start off with Rams Green Bay on the 4:00 slate, or the 4:00 schedule there out in LA. The line is 57. Rams favored by 9.5. The Packers are kind of trading on their name more than anything right now, in my opinion. Rodgers has really kept them in so many games and won so many games for them that really not hardly any other quarterback could have done. Maybe Patrick Mahomes is the only other guy out there that can create the way Rodgers can. My gut tells me that the Rams are going to come out and show just how much better than the Packers they are. And can Rodgers make the late charge that he's just done time and time again over the last year and a half and pull them back into the game, hit that over, cover the spread? Sure. The Rams defense is not an elite defense where they're not going to give points up. Sure, they've got some talent. They've got a good D-line. They've got some pieces in the secondary, but there's definitely points to be scored against them. So this is a game a lot of people are targeting. They think there's going to be a lot of fantasy goodness and pretty focused fantasy goodness. On the Rams side, it's really just two receivers, Woods and Cooks, with Kupp out, and then Gurley. They don't use their tight end. And over on the Packers side, it's really Devontae Adams and Geronimo Allison, because sounds like he's good to go. Cobb is questionable. I'm going to kind of ignore him, even if he does, get the start. I think his role is going to be limited. Jimmy Graham can be involved a little bit, but you've got really just two receivers and a running back on the Ram side, and then just two receivers on the Packer side. So you on that same line of thinking for this game, Jeremy?
Yeah, this game for the most part for me is a little bit out of my price preference for almost all of the players, because it's hard to start playing Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks both at 7.5K, because now they obviously, for wide receivers, their targets they take from one another, right? So Jared Goff throws the ball, he can only throw the ball to either Woods or Cooks. So that's one less for the other. So now they're starting to get to the price where they're starting to get a little bit harder to play and trust, knowing that there is so many good wide receivers on that team, and any of them can pop at any time. So they will all be in play for me in GPPs, but in cash, I mean, I can't sit there and say that like I trust Robert Woods to 100% smash for me, because Brandon Cooks can also have that 110-yard game with 2 touchdowns, and Robert Woods can have 6 receptions for 70, and Goff only has 2 touchdowns that day. And
Woods is maybe a little more dependent on the touchdown, but both guys have seen solid volume. I'm good with both. Yeah. There are 2 guys down the totem pole here that should be involved. You've got Josh Reynolds. He's going to fill in as the third receiver for the Rams. And we've seen with Cooper Kupp out the last 2 weeks, Reynolds has gotten his snaps. He's gotten them on the outside, with Woods moving to the inside, Cooks a little bit too. But he's the guy that's going to get, that snap share. He's not going to get the target share that Kupp did, but I think he's going to be involved this week. Last week they played the Niners, and smart teams have kind of just sacrifice one of their wide receivers to Richard Sherman's side of the field. And we talked about that last week. Is this something that could happen to Josh Reynolds, given that, if you're going to let Sean McVay use Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks on the other side and out of the slot, like, sure, that's like he's playing chess, you're playing checkers. So that's not going to happen this week against Green Bay. Their corners aren't good in any of the 3 spots. Their passing defense is not good. They don't have a great rushing defense either. So I think Reynolds at his price isn't a bad play, especially, everybody used him last week. They thought this is the guy. He's in the Rams offense. So he interests me. And then on the other side, you've got Marquez Valdes-Scantling. If Cobb does not go, MVS filled in as that, this little bit of the slot and outside mixing with Allison. And he showed that he can be involved. So, Allison going moves him down the totem pole a little bit, but I think Valdes-Scantling is getting closer to Geronimo Allison, with trust with Rodgers, with his ability as the season's going to go on here, and barring injury, like he could pull even with Allison. Do you have any love for either of those guys, Jeremy?
For the most part, I would rather go with the Packers side of the passing game. For the simple fact that the Rams are so good that they are going to be scoring. It's like, I don't know if you remember the year Chip Kelly was the coach of the Eagles, where they ran amazing offense and they went like 11-5, but they ran that amazing offense. And because they were so good on offense, their defense suffered because they had so many possessions given to the other team. So every game was like a shootout for them. So unfortunately, for how good the Rams offense is, even though the defense has talent, they are going to give up these points. So with that said, Aaron Rodgers is one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time and one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So now you're going to almost always force him to throw the ball because they're going to be playing from behind for 75% of the game, most likely, because they'll be behind from the first quarter. Right. So having to play from behind, that just loads up on extra targets for guys like Allison and guys like Davante Adams. And Davante Adams is matchup proof. He's hit on the game versus Rhodes. He's hit versus White versus the Bills, and he's
Rodgers just finds him for a touchdown somehow, some way, like almost every week. So
no, Rodgers. The thing about Rodgers is that he'll rather throw to the guys that he trusts rather than just the scheme. So if the scheme calls for the slot pass, but he sees Davante Adams in single coverage, he's going to throw the ball to Davante Adams.
He's got that confidence. Interesting point you brought up there about the defense running extra plays, because that Chip Kelly team was essentially playing a 17th game because of their pace. Like they ran that many snaps, because of the offense, that they played an entire extra game over the course of a season. And a team that parallels to that right now are the Cleveland Browns. They've had so many OTs and games that they've had to like chase in and run a ton of plays. They're in that same kind of boat where like they're probably pretty worn out coming into Pittsburgh here, and Pittsburgh's coming off their bye week, should be rested. That locker room seems like it's gotten through its problems. Le'Veon on the horizon could be an issue, but he hasn't shown up. So it's business as usual until he steps foot in the building. Lots to like here. We've got Ben at home. That's obviously always a good thing. He's going to be pretty popular. He's priced up as well. You mentioned James Conner to start the show. Great spot. The Browns, their rush defense had got some pub to start the year, but they're nothing special. Their defense, it can be aggressive, but I think that's this coming into Pittsburgh. That's actually a negative. I think Ben can beat the blitz. I think short passes to Connor are also going to help there. Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, they're two of the best at what they do. Antonio on the outside, Juju out of the slot. James Washington, his snap share has really gone down, so I'm not throwing any darts on him. And then Vance McDonald at tight end, he's really come on as the year's gone on. He's run, I forget, it was a huge percentage of routes on dropbacks for Roethlisberger. it's been McDonald running the routes as the tight end. So he's in a good spot against a Browns team that can get beat. Over on the other side, this is a tough one to say whether the Browns are going to be in this or not, because they fell out of it quick last week against the Bucs and then came back and managed to make a game of it before still, tragically failing. And then there's also a stat I heard today. The Steelers are 1-7 against the spread at home in their last 8. So like that should mean that if there's points being scored, the Browns are in it. What's your feeling on the Browns, Jeremy?
Every time I want to trust them over the last few weeks, they always let me down.
That's the Browns.
Yeah, I was like, it's always like that. Yeah, last week I remember tweeting, I was like, I can't believe I put real money on a Browns deck this week. Like, it was just the worst decision I've ever made. Yeah, I got lucky with that late overtime stuff, but it's just not fun. Yeah, the Browns, they are what they are. They give up I believe top five in plays allowed versus the pass and the run. Mm-hmm. So as like you mentioned earlier. So they're gonna be, it's always gonna be some kind of high scoring game if they're gonna be in it. So there's two ways to attack it. If you think that there's no chance that the Browns are gonna be in it, then you just run James Conner by himself and you just hope for that he gets those 30 carries again like he did in week 1. In the same matchup. Or if you think that the Browns stay in it, then you take James Conner, you take Juju Smith-Schuster, and you run it back with Landry, who's being force-fed 15 targets a game over the last few weeks. So it's all about how you think the approach is going to be. So flip a coin.
Yeah, I mean, Landry's really the only one I've got much trust in. I wouldn't say I was fully on board the Baker train. I actually kept pointing out to people that this is Cleveland. Like, they'll figure out a way to ruin Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
But like it's been bad for Baker outside of the game he came in, and all that adrenaline, kind of carried him. Last week he didn't have the turnovers, but he still got sacked 5 times, and that's 3 straight games that he's been sacked 5 times. This offensive line struggled last year. Seems like it's struggling this year. We gave Tyrod a lot of flack for holding on to the ball and things like that. Maybe Baker has the same problem. Maybe he's not pulling the trigger, but sacks belong to the quarterback, and 5 in a row is an alarming trend. He cut the interceptions out, but that could crop right back up if he's getting pressured, and bringing pressure is kind of the one thing Pittsburgh does well on defense. Baker, I'm not going there.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that, because my favorite defense this week is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They're popular. They're affordable. I really can't see anywhere else to go, though. Like, I don't care that they're popular.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about football, is that sometimes the best plays are popular, and they're popular for a reason, right? You're basically starting off this game with a guarantee that you're going to get at least 4 or 5 sacks, at least 1 turnover. So you're going to get at least an interception or a fumble. So you're getting at least 5 points guaranteed. You can't guarantee that anywhere else. And whenever you can guarantee at least 1 turnover, you already having an upside for a defensive touchdown, right? And that's ultimately what we're trying to get. Yeah. So if you're going cash, it's Steelers D. Outside of that, I mean, it's so hard to predict defense.
Yeah, I wouldn't take any other defense in cash, even in tournaments. Like, it's just
no reason to let the 70% pay the rake.
Right. Call it even and beat somebody somewhere else at a different position.
Yeah. Exactly. I'll give you my wide receiver 3 or something.
Yeah. And then, maybe Njoku, he's got a little bit of a knee that's lingering, but he's starting to come on as Baker's kind of developing, and he scored a touchdown last week. Should continue to show some positive signs. Next game I want to talk about. The Broncos are visiting the Chiefs. Feels like these guys just played because they did. It's in Kansas City. All kinds of trends going on here. You've got a lot of money is on the under, and a lot of money is on the Chiefs, despite being 10-point favorites. So, that's my guess at the under is because it's a divisional game. It's the second divisional game they've played recently. They're both going to be pretty well aware of what the other team succeeded with. Typically in tough matchups like this in interdivisions, it's gonna hit the under. But then again, the Chiefs this year, all bets are off. And then you've got the Chiefs by 10. That I think people are assuming that they're going to come out and just blow the doors off, but the Broncos kind of came back to life last week. I know it was against the hapless Cardinals, but that defense could be feeling good. The offense, had a great performance. It could be a different story. And this game was a pretty close game the first time around. What are your thoughts on the game in general, Jeremy?
I feel like every single time this game plays, Tyreek Hill just goes nuts. It didn't quite happen this year, but he had the 10 targets this year in the first matchup. But I just remember, I think it was last season, I think he had 3 touchdowns in one of these games. It was like a kick return or a punt return touchdown, and 2 deep touchdowns. So with a guy like that, I mean, he is absolutely always in play. And like I said, my love for Kareem Hunt this week is the Denver Broncos. I got their defensive boost as being 1.3 above the league average on the NFL tools. So that is second highest on the slate behind the Lions. And people probably aren't really catching on to that, but
yeah, they're a run funnel.
Yeah, they're just and they're not only giving up more yards than average, they're giving up more carries than average, more touchdowns than average, and more targets to running backs than average. And Kareem Hunt, over the last 2 games, after starting out the season with just 1 target over the first 3 games, he's had 5 targets over each of the last 2 games. So now we know he's going to get more action in the passing game as well. Yep. So it's not just Kareem Hunt with the handoffs, it's Kareem Hunt with the targets as well. So that's Kareem Hunt's my favorite play on this game here.
And everyone was pretty much panicking, 3-4 weeks ago that he wasn't getting any passing work, and his role in the passing game had definitely changed. And then all of a sudden, he comes out and scores 3 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 weeks to go along with 1 rushing touchdown.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird because if you look in the past, all of Andy Reid's running backs have always had good receiving work in the receiving game, or in the passing game, I should say. Remember, Spencer Ware was a great fantasy asset because he just always had receiving work. And then when he went down, Kendrick West became a good fantasy asset for that same reason. Kareem Hunt, as long as he's in Andy Reid's system, he's always going to get that passing work.
Yep. On Tyreek Hill, the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is he does have some weird home road splits where, for whatever reason, he's better on the road.
I think he's just a show off.
Yeah, just wants to really rub it into the opposing team's crowd. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily isn't predictive, I guess, in every situation. Just something to think about. I wouldn't go nuts with Tyreek Hill.
The PFF rating for Tyreek Hill, they have him at 82.6, and then they have his matchup, which is going to be Adam Jones most likely, as a slightly above average matchup. So
Yeah.
It's nothing crazy, but like I said, I feel like these are the kind of games that Tyreek Hill usually explodes in.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been saying it all season. Scott Barrett has it right. He dedicates $50 to Tyreek Hill lineups just so that he doesn't have to worry about missing out. Like it's just it's not a bad strategy. I mean, that might not be your budget, but
Yeah,
you can dedicate $5. You can dedicate one lineup. Throw it in the $3 and um, just know that when Tyreek Hill goes off, you have him.
yeah, and that's the
But
best
yeah,
you can do.
then you got Sammy Watkins, who's been pretty quiet, and Travis Kelce hasn't scored a touchdown in a little bit either. I feel like so those guys are both due for some touchdown variance in a positive regression sense. So they could make a sneaky kind of combination with Hunt. Over on the other side, the Broncos. Royce Freeman ruled out, I believe. So you've got Philip Lindsay should handle the majority of the work. And I think it was Kenny on Slack was asking about Lindsay as a pivot off of some people. I really like Lindsay this week. Outside of the game he got ejected from, he's been really dependable. He runs really hard. He gets tough yardage. He's elusive. He's really involved in the passing game. Yes, Devontae Booker is going to put a dent in his work a little bit. They'll throw Booker the ball as well. But like Lindsay can't handle every single snap. I think as long as he's getting something like 70% of the touches, he's going to have a really solid day.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you because I must have missed the Royce Freeman thing. I have Lindsay right now for 10 carries. So what do you think he'll get? About 16 carries with Devontae Booker taking some of those from Royce Freeman?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't think they probably want him getting up to 20. That's he's still not a big guy, and they need him in the passing game.
So if I put him at 16 carries, let's see where because he was already, yeah, I mean, he was already top 12 running back for me. That puts him at third for value behind Kareem Hunt and James Conner, which are projected for 20 points and 112 rushing yards in this matchup.
Right. And that's easy to hit 16. I mean, he sat around 12 to 14 most of the season. He had 14 last week with Royce Freeman missing part of that game. So they probably want to keep him 15, 16 touches or rushes plus what he gets in the passing game.
But I have him at 3.5 targets. So, yeah, I know Devontae Booker is usually the one who usually takes those third down snaps for the targets. And the Chiefs are that's their weakness is pass catching backs, because they're giving up much more than average targets per game to the pass catching backs, and the yards per target is the highest on the slate.
Yeah. And then the other side of that coin, I'm not really interested in Devontae Booker. I don't think he's good at football. So sure, he'll get some usage in a game that's going to feature some scoring and a pretty bad defense on the other side. So could he score some points? Sure. Maybe he converts a goal line carry. Maybe he catches a couple nice screens or something. But I don't know. I'm not chasing that rabbit. As far as the receivers go, I believe Manny Sanders is going to be good to go here. Things have been pretty quiet with his ankle. That was in the Thursday night game last week. He's had time to heal. He's the main feature of their passing game at this point. Demaryius Thomas, Courtland Sutton are kind of splitting snaps right now. I really like Sutton. He's a great price. He's had some touchdowns called back, some things like that. And he's kind of like they're one of their top red zone options as far as the passing game. So if this game goes nuts, he's not a bad way to get exposure to it. He's really cheap on DK. He's like 3.8K on DK. On FanDuel, he's 5.3, which is still pretty solid. Anybody else in this game you want to mention, Jeremy?
Nah, I probably won't touch any of those cheaper guys. I feel like there's better options out there. Sutton, he's a touchdown or bust. So
Yep.
I probably won't go there, especially not in cash. I've been doing one lineup a week over the last few weeks to try and get some spikes in my
Right.
winnings. So I probably won't touch them.
Yeah, he's a GPP play.
Yeah.
Let's hit one more positive game here, and then we'll talk kind of a clunker. You got the Bucks visiting the Bengals. Neither defense is going to show up here. I don't think that the Bengals are like the walking wounded. They're missing all kinds of people. Perfect is out. DeQuiz Denard is out. And thank goodness that Perfect is out, because that dude should not be playing football. Like, I hate to see anyone get injured, but I would not shed a tear if Perfect, had both of his legs fall off. um,
Well, this will be a revenge game for him, right?
well, he's out, so yeah.
I know, yeah, it would have been.
Um, but yeah, then the Bucks defense, their secondary is kind of a disaster. I'm kind of curious to see what happens the rest of the season, because they can Mike Smith, their defensive coordinator, I believe 2 weeks ago, and I mean, it was the Browns, so it's hard to say, but they weren't as bad. I mean, they got up and then they let him back in. So this will be an interesting test for that defense. But there was 49 points in that Browns Bucks game, and while not a small total, I think most people were expecting some fireworks there. Same thing here. Like, people are expecting some fireworks. I mean, there's guys on both sides that can get it done, but we'll see. I actually kind of like the Bucks in this one. I know they're the Florida team traveling to the north, and it could be a little colder than they're used to and all that stuff. But Winston, he's a bit of a wild card. Like, he's producing somehow. A lot of it's got like rushing totals tied to it for him. He's still turning the ball over more than I'm comfortable with, but if the Bengals are beat up, they might continue to be aggressive in their play calling and tear through that secondary. I could see Evans and Djax both having good days. Godwin, his usage has been pretty solid. Not quite where you would want it, but he's definitely a deep threat. And then I've just got a perpetual love for OJ Howard. I think he's probably the next great tight end once he solidifies his role and he manages to stay healthy for a full season. This is the second time he's had a fairly significant injury in his 2-year career. So I'm going to play a little OJ Howard and just hope that he's tied to a fairly productive game. And over on the Bengals side, another really focused offense. You've got Mixon. I believe Gio Bernard is ruled out, so Mixon is going to be their running back. Like, they've given a handful of carries to Mark Walton, and most of them have been just atrocious. They don't trust him in the passing game either, so Mixon's going to get his usual crazy amount of usage. AJ Green, that's the only person that Andy Dalton looked at last game. Tyler Boyd caught a couple late passes, but that was it. CJ Uzomah had an okay line for what tight end has become as a position, but I don't mind Uzomah, but he's a red zone option, and he's got to catch a touchdown for him to hit. But yeah, AJ Green really on the Bengals side. Anything in this Bucks game you like, Jeremy?
Yeah, right now I have Andy Dalton as the top valued quarterback on my projections.
I like that. I like that because he let so many people down last week in prime time, and you should know that Andy Dalton, you don't use him in prime time. It's a thing.
Not only that, but you shouldn't. You should or you shouldn't fade Andy Dalton in cupcake matchups, because for some reason, like, he explodes in cupcake matchups. Like, he has 4 touchdown games in first half type things. Like, so yeah, Andy Dalton, I'm all good with. And then if I'm gonna play Andy Dalton, I'm definitely gonna take either Tyler Boyd or AJ Green, if not both. because that's 75% of who's most likely to score a touchdown if Andy Dalton is throwing the ball to them.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's who I'm going with for the most part. But the one other thing you have to understand is that the Bengals play at such a slow pace, so that like most people might think this game can blow up, and well, they might think that it will blow up, and it can, but being that they do play at such a slow pace, it can always suck. Like you might be looking at the game and watching and then realizing like where did the time go? There's only been like four
Right.
drives and it's the first end of the first half.
It's all going to depend on who scores first and early. If the Buccaneers can put some points up, that'll draw the Bengals out a little more. But
yeah, ideally, well, we already know that the way that this Buccaneers offense works is that they're so aggressive that they're just going to keep throwing the ball. So Jameis Winston is almost a lock for at least 300 yards, right? So if you want a floor, you can go there because Jameis Winston is going to have 300 yards and he's going to have 1 to 2 touchdowns to either Mike Evans or Deshaun Jackson or Cameron Brate as he gets into the red zone.
Yep.
But if you want the upside and the GPP winning upside, then I would take Andy Dalton in that case because I've seen him go out there and put up 4 touchdowns in the first half and just have monster games versus horrible defenses like this.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's transition that into to positions, and we'll start off with quarterbacks. So you like Andy Dalton. I feel like we've talked about a good amount of the main plays. You know, Mahomes is the most expensive.
Yeah.
You know, do what you do there, whether you're a Mahomes user or not. We talked about Rodgers and Goff. Really nice matchup that could go back and forth. Roethlisberger at home. Not too many more people. Is there anybody I'm missing in that list, Jeremy?
Nah, not really. I mean, you got the Andy Dalton and Winston.
Yeah.
Combo.
The one guy I would maybe be interested in is Andrew Luck. Don't love him on the road, but the weather should be good out in Oakland still.
Yeah, versus a tanking Raiders team all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Marlon Mack had a huge week, but that team is going to be run through Andrew Luck. He's typically going to have a lot of attempts, and he's throwing a lot of touchdown passes. So, you know, his matchup every week kind of feels gross, and then he ends up throwing 4 touchdowns on 60 attempts. So, not the case last week, but
Yeah. The only other quarterback that I would consider is Mitch Trubisky because apparently he's just turned into something different with
when that Matt Nagy game plan hits, man, it hits. And Trubisky's rushing a good amount, and that's one of the reasons I really like Trubisky preseason. He was like my safety net at quarterback and like best balls, things like that, where people would start emptying out the tier ahead of those guys like Andy Dalton, Eli Manning. When those guys started to go, like Trubisky was my go-to because he was going to run the ball in Matt Nagy's offense, and he's got the ability to do it.
Yep.
All right, let's shift gears to running backs. We talked about Gurley, Kareem Hunt. I could totally see this Chiefs Denver matchup being the Kareem Hunt show, where they just give him all the usage and he just pounds the ball, catches the ball out of the backfield, scores all the touchdowns. Does his best Todd Gurley impression. One guy we didn't talk about was David Johnson getting the 49ers. You've got the Cardinals switching offensive coordinators to Byron Leftwich, who came up under Bruce Arians. You know, he says he's going to use a lot of the concepts that they were using under Arians. We'll see. It's really hard to change from what their offense has been, kind of a meat and potatoes offense, into the vertical attack that Arians employed, especially with a rookie quarterback. But some of the concepts will be there, especially would be good to see David Johnson being split out, used in the passing game, really where he's a true weapon. Uh, so I'm kind of going to hold my breath on that one and see, but it's a good matchup if they do use him. You know, I could see DJ having like a 2 touchdown day in a fairly close game. You like DJ, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think my internet cut out for a little bit because like you froze and then all of a sudden you just started speeding up. So I didn't hear almost anything you just said until you started talking about David Johnson. But if you mentioned Kareem Hunt and James Conner,
Yep.
those are the two guys that as I mentioned earlier, those are the two guys that I'm looking at the most. And you did mention about Marlon Mack last week having a big day, and I have this as being one of the best matchups that he's had so far. So I do have him as a good value.
Yeah, he's an interesting case because like the Raiders, you could definitely run on them. I don't love the situation still. Like, yes, he's probably their best running back, but he's perpetually injured. He practiced today, I believe, and possibly yesterday. I can't recall. But he's practiced. He's gonna suit up for the game, but who knows how healthy he is. I'm not sure I want to chase any of these running backs that had breakouts last week, like Carry-On, Mack, um, Tariq Cohen, even like he's got a little bit better floor because of the passing, but maybe that's just not the game plan this week. Like Nagy's rolled out a few different game plans, and it's possible that Cohen is either not featured or the game script doesn't dictate it. So
Yeah, the thing about Cohen is last 2 weeks you could have predicted those things happening because he just had matchups where he was so much faster than the opposing linebacker core that of course Nagy was gonna get that um matchup exploited. This week I'm not sure it's quite that obvious.
yeah. And then I mentioned Raheem Mostert. He's got Matt Breida to compete with because Breida's practicing. I don't mind throwing a little Mostert in there if you're building a lot of lineups, just on the chance that Breida goes down with the ankle injury for like the third week in a row. Chris Thompson, another guy that if he can get on the field, he's a nice play. And then you've got some new faces popping up. Doug Martin coming out of the bye, taking over for injured Marshawn Lynch, but he's Doug Martin. You've got Ronald Jones. Seems like he's probably on his way to surpassing Peyton Barber, but Barber hasn't been ruled out, I don't believe. So if he is active, it's still a split. And also Ronald Jones is Ronald Jones. So like there's not any great pay downs this week.
Yeah, and there's no reason to. Just running back is one of the most predictive things that you can play. That's one of the most predictive positions. So I'm almost never paying down for running back unless it's a situation like Chubb last week where I knew for sure that he was going to get the goal line work and I knew for sure he was going to get the carries. There's no reason to do it otherwise. Not with Kareem Hunt, Connor, Lindsey, all on the slate.
Yeah, I actually don't mind Chubb this week again. I can see him having another fairly similar day with, it's probably not going to be great if you're watching the game, but at the end of the day, I think the stats will be there to at least have a solid performance. All right, over to wide receiver. We've hit a lot of these guys as well in the main matchups. One guy that was left off, T.Y. Hilton. He's back, says he's feeling good. The hamstring's good, and there's literally no one else to target on that team. he's Andrew Luck's go-to. So I don't like Hilton on the road either. I mentioned that with Luck, but when you pepper him with targets, like he's always a threat to take one to the house. So I have a hard time seeing T.Y. Hilton not scoring a touchdown this game. Some other guys we didn't mention, the Detroit Lions crew. Golden Tate says he's good to go. He had an ankle during the week, but I kind of like all three of the guys. Like Marvin Jones has just been dying to have a breakout game, even though he's kind of lost some of that, end zone and deep play work to Kenny Galladay. I love Kenny Galladay. He's in a great spot. He's another guy that's had some fluky stuff happen with some touchdowns, either being like rolled off or just caught out of bounds. So he could have a huge day any given week. What do you think about the Lions this week, Jeremy?
I hate trying to predict them. I hate it. It's just so annoying because, like last year, it was so much easier when Kenny Galladay wasn't a thing. He was
Right.
just, if he had a big play, he had a big play. Outside of that, it was all Marvin Jones for deep action and Golden Tate under the underneath. So if there was a team who let it go deep, then we play Marvin Jones. If there was a team who like to funnel to the inside, then we play Golden Tate. This week, this year, Kenny Galladay is like the middleman. Like he does everything. Golden Tate does the underneath, and Marvin Jones does the deep stuff. So you never know who's gonna pop because Kenny Galladay is always in play.
Yep.
It's fun to try and predict that. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, Tate's the only guy getting any consistency really with just targets and reception. So on a full PPR site, a little more interesting there. On the other side with the Seahawks, which guy do you like better? Do you like Doug Baldwin or Tyler Lockett more in this one?
I'd probably go with Lockett, just because he's been a little bit more consistent this year. Outside of that, though, I probably wouldn't touch neither of them because the Seahawks just want to run the ball. So
that's been
if Russ is not throwing the ball 35 times a game, then I gotta compete with other receivers for 25 targets. That's not very fun.
Yeah. All right, and then just a couple guys down the board. You got two Cardinals receivers, Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk, both pretty cheap prices this week. And again, if Leftwich is going to try and get this offense humming a little bit, Kirk has shown a rapport with Josh Rosen. He's got some upside there on that basis. And then Larry Fitzgerald, Byron Leftwich mentioned him by name and said, he's a guy that we really have to get involved in this offense. Fitzgerald seems healthy. He doesn't. I mean, if he lost a step, he should have lost it a few years ago. Like I don't think this is the year he lost the step. He's a guy who could have like a 2 touchdown game playing like that slot tight end role where they throw to him in the red zone. He's usually good for a couple of those a year. So maybe in a divisional matchup here that's winnable. Both of these teams need a win. They both only have one win. They may not get another rest of the season. So they're going to go after it.
Two ways you can look at this, because this was the matchup where Christian Kirk took a 75-yarder to the house on the first drive. So you can look at it like the 49ers watched the tape and they figured out how to stop Kirk, and so that opens up Fitzgerald. Or you can look at it as, well, they obviously can't stop Kirk, and so you fire him up again. So I like them both for the same situations. It's just all about the thing about NFL is that you have to convince yourself that this is how the games will go, and that's why you roster who you roster. So if you believe that 49ers can make adjustments and Kirk will be their primary target who they want to eliminate, then you take Fitzgerald. If you think that they're just incapable of doing so, then you take Kirk.
Yep. Anybody else at wide receiver, Jeremy?
Did we talk about Emmanuel Sanders?
Yeah, we hit him in the Denver breakdown. He's always a great option.
Yeah, Odell is always in play because he's the most talented receiver in the league.
Yeah, and his price has come down.
Yeah, we talked about Juju, we talked about Kirk, Geronimo Allison we mentioned, Devontae Adams we talked about. Well, I mentioned him and how he's matchup proof. I do think he hits again in this matchup. Marcus Peters has not been great this year at all.
No.
And Devontae Adams is, like I say, he's matchup proof, and they'll be trailing the entire game. So I think he's good for his usual 7 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Outside of them, I think if you're playing Mitch Trubinsky, you can fire up Taylor Gabriel with that stack.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll be worthy because the Jets do allow they are above average matchup for targets alone. But outside of that, there's not much. Like they're not allowing many yards or touchdowns to wide receivers. But the volume will be there, and as long as Taylor Gabriel is getting volume in this Nagy offense, then he's always been a Tyreek Hill type game in him.
Yeah, and he burned a lot of people last week, so I always like going back to a guy on that basis because his ownership is going to be a little lower than it would have been in a vacuum.
Yeah, you almost have to. I mean, he owes you money.
Yep.
So
All right, let's hit tight ends. As usual, tight end landscape is a wasteland. Kelsey is the only one of the big three on this slate. No Ertz because he's in the London game. Gronk's playing on Monday night.
Yeah.
You got Kittle up there at 6.8.
Do I really want to spend 6.8 for Kittle?
Yeah, like that's a tough spot there.
And I just dropped my score on FanDuel.
just roster a backup Eric Swope.
Roster tight end and just take the Gurley and
right.
Connor and Hunt 3-way upside at running back.
Right. And people are going to chase Burton. I don't know that he's going to have anywhere near the performance he had. Ebron's got Jack Doyle to deal with, who's projected to play. Doyle probably doesn't come back at full speed, so not going to cut into the snap share the way that you might expect, but he's back. You got Jordan Reed taking on the Giants. It'd be nice if Jordan Reed showed some life, if that Washington offense showed some life. In 2 straight weeks, Washington has had under 200 passing yards. Like in today's NFL, if I'm an owner or a GM, if my offense has less than 200 passing yards for 2 straight weeks, like I'm going to be going down to the coach's office and letting him know this happens again, you're done. You're out. Rest of the season, we'll figure it out. But if Washington can manage to actually have some aggression, Jordan Reed, he's in a good spot against the Giants defense that seems to be shopping all of its parts.
Yeah, and it's not very fun to try and predict these tight ends. To be honest, I don't have much input. I'm just gonna punt. Like, I mean, the best play probably is Cook or Njoku, because Njoku, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense funnels a lot of targets to tight ends, and they allow above average targets per reception, or receptions per target, I should say. And he has been getting above 7 targets per game over the last few weeks, but that's 5.7K. I mean, I'd rather punt that with a 4K guy who probably was gonna take a 0 and just pay that up for more running backs, because I mean, what's the ceiling for these tight ends? 11 to 15.
Right. Yeah, I mean the problem is there's been maybe not 4K tight ends, but like there's been some tight ends that you could save a lot of salary on. I mentioned Swope. He scored a touchdown that was it last week or 2 weeks ago? It was like all of the third string tight ends were scoring touchdowns. I just don't see it this week. The only guy down in the 4s that I would really have much interest in is Nick Vannett.
Yeah, that's what I have highlighted right now.
Yeah, like it's just kind of the way like the Seattle offense goes, is the tight end tends to score a touchdown sooner or later. So,
I mean, what's
He's
it?
due.
CJ Uzuma. But I mean, he's not really getting targets. So I mean, he's
Yeah, that's all
average.
going to go to AJ Green. But yeah, I don't mind having a little Uzoma.
I mean, yeah, this is a wasteland. I don't want to talk about them.
All right, we got a couple minutes left. Um,
I was gonna say, do you want to build a lineup?
I was gonna say let's go through defense. I mean, I know we hit it a little bit.
Okay.
The one thing I would say is on the defensive side. I know everybody thinks like the Bears are in such a great spot. They're getting a rookie quarterback on the road. And it could definitely go well for the Bears on defense. They could be the top scoring defense, but just the way this year has gone, and there's been so much offense. Like I hardly ever want to pay for the top defense. Um, the Bears themselves haven't been that good. They're giving up a ton of points. Like Brock Osweiler, the Brock Osweiler led Dolphins scored I think 31 against them 2 weeks ago. They let the Patriots back into the game last week. Like this is not a shutdown defense. This is not a dominant defense, and the Jets have scored way more points than I think a lot of people realize. So, if you didn't have to pay a salary assigned to them, sure, they'd be somebody I'd be interested in. But they're $1,000 more than most of these other defenses you're interested in. That's just a tough pill to swallow for me. That said, like we mentioned though, there's like the Steelers, maybe the Chiefs, because the thing you got to remember is it's defense and special teams. The Chiefs have Tyreek Hill. That's always a possibility to create points. And even as bad as their defense is, like they're forcing teams to play into them to try and score points. They could score a defensive touchdown. I'd probably say they've got some of the best odds at a defensive touchdown if you were going to try and predict such a thing that's unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is that people don't realize that sometimes when games shoot out, the defense usually goes off too. Look last week. Was it last week? I believe the Patriots scored.
Yep.
Cordell Patterson had a kickoff return touchdown, and then with a pick six touchdown, and they gave up like 40 points.
Yep.
So it's 100% possible to give up all those points and also get those defensive touchdowns. So don't be afraid to roster teams in blowouts, because the more pass attempts, the more opportunity for interceptions, turnovers, and sacks.
Yep.
So yeah, I wouldn't mind the Chiefs defense.
All right. So then you wanna put a lineup together real quick here, Jeremy?
Yeah, let's see what we can cook up. Let me go into the good old FanDuel. Let's see. I want to get a feel for what some construction can look like.
I mean, for me at quarterback, I don't know that I'm going down to Andy Dalton, and I know you said you like him as the top value. I just feel like I want one of these guys that are going to be in one of the top games, either Roethlisberger, Goff, or Rodgers. What out of those three, which one would you say has the best shot?
Let me screen share real quick so you can see what I'm looking at. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so we're starting at quarterback. What was the three that you wanted?
Goff, Roethlisberger, or Rodgers. I think one of those guys is going to break the slate, so I think you got to have them.
Well, first things first. Let's figure out who we want to lock in, because quarterback is like the top quarterback and the lowest quarterback are going to be probably like 10 to 15 points apart, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so let's lock in our top options first. Do you want to fade Gurley?
And go let's leave Gurley out for this exercise.
All right, yeah, let's see if we have enough money to get up to him later. All right,
I'm gonna use your boys Connor and Hunt.
Yeah, all right, let's start off with Connor and Hunt. Let's see, that leaves us with 6K. what do we want to do from here? Do you want to open up some salary with defense?
Yeah, put the Steelers in. That was really the only defense we were interested in.
Yeah. All right, so now we got the Steelers in there. All right. All right, now, any lock wide receivers do you have?
I think it's pretty wide open at wide receiver, so
Yeah.
I don't think there's a must play this week like we had Thielen last week.
Yeah, any values that you really like?
I do tend to either want to get either like Kenny Galladay or a guy like that that's a little bit more of a middle tier receiver that could have a huge day.
Okay. 6.6K. Let's see. All right, so let's put Kenny Galladay in there. All right. Let's see. I'm still on the Tyler Boyd is way too cheap train, so I'm gonna put him in there as well.
Good bounce back spot for him.
Yeah. Horrible defense he's facing. Do you want to try and predict a tight end?
Tight end.
Yeah, or do you want to punt it? What's the cheapest we can play?
What's Vance McDonald? I think he was a good price on FanDuel.
5.3. For 400 more, we can get Njoku for guaranteed targets.
Go Vance McDonald because I think that game it plays to McDonald.
Oh, Doyle's back. We didn't talk about him.
Yeah, you might have been cut out while I was mentioning him.
Okay.
You don't know what he's going to get.
Yeah.
Coming off a hip.
So now that leaves us with 7K. So what I usually like to do is at least stack one wide receiver with quarterback. So now let's look at our quarterbacks, and we wanted either Goff, Dalton, or who else?
Roethlisberger.
Or Roethlisberger. Well, Roethlisberger's out of it for me. I mean, he's not completely out of it because he's at home, and as long as he's at home, he can put up a monster score.
Mm-hmm. Pop Dalton in there. See, I think you're probably going to need him with our salary situation.
Let's see. Yeah, we have 6.K left for a flex and a wide receiver. I like to go flex first to see if there's any running backs that I want to really get in there. Oh, we can get Lindsay in there. Where's he at? Yeah. Let's get Lindsay in there.
Lindsay, yeah. I find myself putting him in every lineup build I've done so far. Like you get to that flex spot and you're just I need somebody who's got some reliability and upside. That's Philip Lindsay this week.
7.1K. Golden Tate left. Tyler Lockett, Jarvis Landry. Well, we have Vance McDonald, we have Pittsburgh, and we have Connor.
Yeah, like you could either go, one of those lower guys and upgrade McDonald. Like you said, you could go to Njoku if you save a little bit there on wide receiver. I'm okay with Golden Tate, if it's a cash lineup.
What do we have to do to get E-Man in there? Is there any that tight end right under it? Jesse James, Ricky Fields, or Jack Doyle?
The only guy down there would probably be Vanette.
Yeah, Eric Swoop is out. He's out with a knee.
Yeah, with Doyle back, you can't really project him. I mean, Brate's right there. He could always catch a touchdown.
I think we can punt with Brate. What does that leave us with? 500. I think that's fine. Leave us with 500 in salary left.
Yeah, it's a solid build. You could always go back and look at and see if there's anybody you could come up off the Steelers from if you really wanted to. But
yeah, I think this is solid. I'm definitely punting at tight end. I'm not paying up for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vance McDonald's going to be really popular too. I think you're going to see that combo, McDonald and the Steelers defense, quite a bit. But I mean, the way this year has gone, the chalk is hit pretty much every week. So
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I think it's a solid build, though. I think a solid construction going with some mid-tier to high-priced running backs. Definitely 3 running backs in all of your builds because it's the most predictive thing that you can have, and some mid-tier wide receivers and punt tight end. Don't even try it.
Yep. But all right, that's what we got time for.
I think that's about it.
Jeremy, thanks for joining me tonight. Good luck this week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck to all you guys. You can get into the Slack chat, the cheat sheet, Jeremy's tools, all the things Lineup Logic has to offer. If you go to patreon.com/lineuplogic, $10 a month to subscribe. It won't tie you in. It's just $10 a month as long as you want it. So come get it.
There it is.
Have a good week, everyone.
All right. Good luck, everyone.